Women's Health Podcast. My name is Isis Swain. I'll be your host today, and we have the Honorable Dr. Christopher Meyers here today, and we'll dive deep into the human weapon system being implemented in the DoD today. And a little bit about Dr. Christopher Meyers. He is a decorated military veteran, a Bronze Star and Meritorious Service Medal recipient, as well as his journey has taken him from the battlefield to the forefront of sports science. After retiring as a captain, he turned his focus to the human body, earning a PhD and contributing pioneering research in the skeletal muscle physiology. And as the founder of the 3 sports science and exercise physiologists for the U.S. Air Force, he's now shaping the future of human performance optimization. Author of the Triathlon Training with Power, Dr. Meyers blends his military precision with sports science innovation. So let's dive deep into the healthcare, also in the DoD and human weapon system side of things. So the book is phenomenal. I'm so excited for version 2 of the human weapon system.
We just came out with version 1.
I know, but there's so many other questions to be desired, especially there's one of the chapters where you mentioned the timing to get an MRI, timing to see a physical therapist. Today, to see an endocrinologist in the diabetes management world in which we operate in, average wait time is 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. That's just to get a diagnosis. Yep. Insane, right? And it's like people need access to insulin, people need access to the imaging machines, as well as like what is their treatment plan. From your side of things, have you seen better interventions to increase or decrease, those wait times?
Yeah, so that is one of the purposes of the idea of these HP and human performance and human performance optimization, also known as HPO programs, is to really kind of improve the access to healthcare. So the example in here was a little bit made up, but it is based off statistics from the research articles that the Army had produced. So you mentioned the ACL. The ACL example in here where the captain actually had to wait 52 days to get the initial MRI. That's based off their numbers. And so that is a very specialized case because, again, orthopedics, MRIs, those are specialized cases. So I know within the DoD they're looking in areas like how can we shorten these wait times, and a lot of that is when it's coming to the first points of contact, those first touch points. So sometimes it could be a 3 to 5 day wait if you're sick just to get in to see a PA, NP, or even a MD, OD. So how can you bring these back? So within a lot of these HPO programs, they have multiple domains, one of them being the medical domain, and they'll have, depending on where they're at in their needs, they'll have a flight surgeon or a PA, like we have in our case, nurse practitioner, NP, different flavors to kind of help with that. And so, for example, now that we have a physician assistant on staff, it really helps reduce those wait times and also travel times for, to other bases where the healthcare is located to meet the needs of our population.
One of the other interesting topics that I loved, and you can share why you decided to take a holistic approach. I know like they're standard for the 5 domains, but what inspired you to continue to elaborate on that? And then 2, the most, I think, missed out topics when incorporating from a performance perspective is the nutrition and the cognitive and the psychological aspects of things and how that affects the performance. And is it the small tweaks within nutrition and even the confession, if you will, or the testing of the cognitive performance? Are those things triggers for better performance, or is there anything that you can extract to tweak to improve the performance? And have you seen anything in that realm?
Oh, there's about 5 questions in that.
Yeah.
So let's try to dive into that. So the first one is, the thought process of the holistic approach. And it's not just the traditional HP modeling that you see out of D1, sports, sports companies, teams, team's the word I'm looking for, which is like your musculoskeletal, your nutrition, psychological, cognitive, and maybe medical in there. It really depends. It's usually like a 3 or 4 domain. DoD, Department of Defense, is kind of spread between a 4 and 6 domain. If we look at the PODIF model, which is MSK, if I remember correctly, medical, spiritual, social, and psychological. So it's a 4. We're trying to go towards a 5 here locally, where it's the musculoskeletal, which is myself and a physical therapist, medical, which is our physician assistant, social, where we have a social worker, and nutrition, where we're trying to get I fill in is there, but eventually our registered dietitian. But it was something that when I was speaking to some other medical staff, just within the community, and someone said, "Well, what about policy?" Like, wait a minute, there's more to this than that. And started thinking is the issue that and it started changing my idea. The way I looked at our tactical populations is we look at it as just an individual that just needs basic medical care and stuff, but. Well, if we look in the military, everything that we have is what we call program of record. So if you look at like your tanks, they're a program of record that's been approved by Congress. So it has dedicated lines of funding for maintenance, life cycle management, the training of the personnel in their X, Y, and Z. Why not the same approach for the most important weapon system? Is the human beings, right? The ones that really are the core of our military, our first responders and law enforcement, right? And that's what got me into this. So it's like, okay, we've got this 5-6 domain approach that we typically see from athletics. Well, it's more than that. And it's the education, it's the policy, life cycle management, cradle to grave, and other areas based on the needs analysis. And that's where I'm trying to get at with this is we need to expand our view of just the traditional athletic model of HP, and it's more than that. And so it's more encompassing.
And so what does maintenance look like for a human weapon system?
It's a lot, because again, let's break the definition down into some of its parts. Human beings, straightforward. Weapon is not necessarily what people think it is. When we typically hear weapon, we think of a gun or something that destroys. But if you really go in the dictionary, it's a tool. That's the base definition. So that's what we're talking about is a tool that can do both destructive, productive, protect, X, Y, and Z, and we go in that in the definition. And a system. System is a system of subsystems. So break that out, right? That's probably the crux of what you're asking. So we got the cardiovascular, you got the cognitive, X, Y, and Z, all the different systems in the human body. So the maintenance of that is working on these systems, whether it's through a strength conditioning program, which hits a lot of the physiological tangibles, but you got the cognitive, right? Working on reaction times, decision making, the social well-being, the ability to, talk, deal with stress, little things like that. The spiritual, which is another important part of the human psyche. So those, that's where we're at right now as, you train hard, you work on, listening, teaching them. There's a lot of education there too. Teaching how to understand your physiological responses to stressors, also known as stress inoculation. Little things like that. And there's many different ways of doing it, and it's based on the needs of your population. So that's the maintenance. It's also improving, but it's also maintaining as well. So, going more in my field where physical fitness, you can only maintain a high level, if you peak, what we do for a single sport event, you can only hold that peak fitness for a long period of time, then you got to recover. If we look at like soccer and swim teams, right? They have seasons all year round. They have to keep a high level of fitness. They're not, theoretically, they're never at the 100%. They may be 97, 95, 97. Like that, and that you're maintaining that fitness, and we do the same exact approach because they always have to be on.
Right, and I think that is what I'm like, I don't know how you do it, because we talk about athletes where they have off seasons, or even certain machines where it's like, you're only operating during these peak hours, and then you get a break. But for these individuals and these soldiers constantly being on, the level of maintenance, I would assume, would be a lot greater than what an athlete.
The needs are a lot more intricate, in my opinion. And so this is where the HPO team works really closely with the command cells, with the operation cells. You know, again, they're all interconnected. Lines of communication are very important.
Yeah.
To really kind of work that in there, you know, to help provide, you know, context with the command team, how the guys are feeling, how they're performing. Is there ways, if we do need to do some forced downtime, you know, as a group, you know, can we work that into the schedule?
Yeah.
Or just locally, like, okay, you know what, you don't look too hot today, we're pulling you off, or you're just going to stretch today, little things like that. So it is that truly a team concept with multiple intersecting lines of communication, but also, again, goes back into what I've said, you know, in our talks kind of offline, it's the relationships that you build with those individuals. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important, is that individual. Even though it's organizational, it's that individual and the relationships that you build with them. And that's how you foster communication.
And in the HPO program, I also want to learn from your perspective of the term resiliency. And there's many different definitions on, like, resiliency is like pushing through, but in terms of where you need recovery and resiliency is your default, how do you kind of tread and balance those lines where it's like, no, resiliency is actually rest, right? Like, let's take some time to recover.
There's many different aspects to resiliency. There really is. And so I know there's people that can go into more depth about it, but at least from a physical side is really kind of identifying, okay, when is it a just pain, just work through it, or is it an actual injury, right? And then taking the downtime, but also working on the mechanics to injury proof. Again, Murphy will happen,
right?
But that's also feeds into that resiliency as well. There's also ways we can work on some of the cognitive stuff, you know, working on stress management, where have these guys, you get on a bike and you sprint as hard as you can for 20 calories, and you get off, and we have this little light system. These things are great. They're called blaze pods. You get them out in the market, and they work reaction times and decision making. And you get them to work it, and like they're getting 5 strikes, and they're getting mad. I'm like, okay, what's causing you? You reflect on that, right? And then as they start identifying, they take a deep breath and get moderately better. It's these little incremental gains that we're always trying to look for. So those are kind of the ways that personally that I know how to kind of help with resiliency in that context.
And offline, we also kind of spoke about within your HPO program, you deliberately make the soldiers or warfighters do their circuit training or permutations in their tactical groups.
Yes.
Does it also build like team
cohesion? It's their number one thing, is because at the end of the day, it's your battle buddy, your left and right when you're going into combat. At the end of the day, you're really caring about how they're going to do. That might be the thing that pushes you through. And it is a brotherhood for these guys. And so anything to help maintain that, that's one of the things they've taught me. Any way to help maintain that is a priority.
Has it also helped for accountability for the 3 kind of vices we talked about for caffeine and alcohol and nicotine, and also like nutrition? Have you seen that?
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. It'd be interesting to look at. But there's a lot I would love to get after, but again, there's only so much in the day you can do. So, that's really good insight, though. That definitely be a really good thing to look at, just informally.
No, because one of the things that we're looking at in greens, of course, it's always there's a balance with everything on like focusing on the individual and then understanding what their environment is, which consists of like literally what is their environment and what are the people that are surrounding, making up that environment, and how they're also influencing behavior to make sure that everybody within that environment, with ours being more the family dynamic, on the same team from a nutrition perspective, from a medication perspective, to make sure that everybody is adherent and not just the individual. Yep, and so something that's also really big in the healthcare community right now is remote patient monitoring,
Yes.
especially with all these different devices that we get to play with. As far as from an analytics perspective and also in real time monitoring, have you seen any interesting insights from your side of the table?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that base question that you want to answer. From the needs analysis.
What about readiness? If that was the
Oh,
question.
that's a huge one. So, what is a big factor in readiness? Is recovery, right? What's a big factor in recovery? Sleep, right? So, and it's well documented that military doesn't get enough sleep.
Yeah.
Product of it, still trying to work on it.
Yeah.
So within that is we bought Oura Rings. Oura Rings. They're on the market. There's other sleep trackers on there. I'm not saying one's better than the other. We just went with Oura Rings.
Right. And we love discounts on anyone. So.
Yeah. And so what that does is it gave us a peer-reviewed biowearable that is, what's what I'm looking for, is accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, peer-reviewed accuracy on a biowearable. The literature was there for this. That's what allowed me to drive this as a recommendation to purchase for that. There's others out there, but that was just my my process.
Right.
So we guys widely accepted. They put them on. It doesn't really affect real skin is real estate on these guys.
Yeah.
Because and it's lightweight, it doesn't take up room, perfect, and it's accurate. Started giving us ideas, insights to sleep providers. We saw that we knew that reduced sleep was a thing. We didn't understand how much it was. We were thinking maybe 6 hours. It was actually less than that.
Really?
So that was the first one. It's like, okay, got it. And started asking the question, why? Just start talking to the guys and stuff. Look, it's the job, it's work. Okay, we're not going to be able to get them more hours. Okay, so what's the next thing you do is you look at the quality of sleep, and that's where we start talking with that is those who really have bad the points where you have bad quality of sleep. We talk made it a point to talk to those individuals and started to talk about the environment. Habits, stuff like that to help try to improve their quality of sleep. Not tell them they need to go to bed sooner, but what can you do to optimize that 4 or 5 hours that you can get on most nights?
No, I think that's good because I also read a study that mentioned if you cut off coffee after like 3 p.m., it can also increase your quality of sleep. Or same with alcohol and other like nicotine if you cut it off at a certain time.
Well, one of the things that's coming out with CGMs and speaking with Phil Sutherland and Howard Zenner over at Super Sapiens is the idea of glucose stability going to bed. In fact, that if you eat a meal or high glucose meal, you get this major spike. It will affect your quality of sleep.
Yes.
And so that's one way. If you can reduce that spike, whether it's through not eating so late or like a supplement like exogenous ketones, right, which can help reduce that, or you have them go for a walk after that meal, it helps with that quality of sleep.
I love that you're mentioning like the usage of CGMs because for a lot of patients that we talked with or work with, a lot of them kind of feel like isolated, like, oh, they're the only person with CGMs. But I truly believe everybody will have a CGM by the time we're done here.
That's you're going to hear different opinions on that.
Interesting.
You will, because before we started utilizing CGMs, I spoke with a couple of dietitians. Yeah. Some were for, others were against.
Interesting.
And, so it's yeah. I mean, I don't know the causalities of it, but it's just that's what I was encountering, and so
But I think going back to the example of understanding how food affects your body, and I think the data that the CGMs are able to produce is undefeatable. Like I think
agreed. But how do you present that data, right? So that how do you make that raw data actionable data? Yeah. How do you present it to the person using it? Yeah. And then make it to the so what? Okay, how do I take this metric? Okay, I'm sticking myself every 2 weeks, which I don't like needles. Right. How do I take this data and make life make these small little changes
Yeah.
to my life, right?
But I think there's a lot of things like for me, I didn't realize I had acid reflux or I had really bad indigestion,
Yeah.
and it was like based on the foods that I was also consuming too.
Yeah.
And it was like those type of insights on like if I know I have a major presentation or I'm hosting a podcast today, and I know I have to be my best self. Those are not the foods I should eat the day before, to make it more actionable on what we should do next.
Again, my opinion.
Yeah.
You have a little bit of leeway, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, you're going to have some standard deviation, and you got to be aware of that, right? But it could give you the point where you're getting enough data over time that you may be seeing something that could be a red flag, and give you enough information to be able to ask the right question.
Yeah.
So I think that's a key distinction. Then it's a really good conversation we were having within the field with biowearables is that standard deviation, right? So like one of them, the big argument was initially with I forget the band that just clips around the arms, that sleep tracker. I'm forgetting the top of my head.
Whoop. Yeah, I was gonna say Whoop.
Yeah, Whoop. One of the arguments was with them is their standard deviation is the sleep was good, but when it came to the heart rate, man, it was just all over the place. They've gotten much better over the years. There was that argument. Well, again, you're getting into the ballpark, right? We don't need to be 100% exact. And it goes into performance athletics. Like, okay. Yeah, I want to go get a VO2 max to figure out my zones as I'm getting really dialed in, but that's $800. I can do a field test, right?
Right.
I'll go out and like on the bike, I'll do a 20-minute threshold test, get 92% accurate based off Dr. Coggin's work, and I can tweak it as I'm training. So it's that cost benefit. We're not diagnosing. Now it'd be different where I'm talking with my PA and where she would use the CGM versus me, it's different standards. And I think that's where we need to kind of also answer that question in these conversations as well.
So what context are you using
exactly?
CGM?
Yeah.
I completely agree. I don't think you should use these devices as a diagnosis. However, I do have a friend that is using early CGMs for gestational diabetes. For patients, because they typically get diagnosed a little bit later for delivery.
It's usually like third trimester, right?
Right. And they're trying to do it more in the second trimester to get a better head start on the treatment process. So context does matter, and clinical oversight also matters too. And you're not just playing with the analytics on yourself.
But the thing is like you can get a good baseline for yourself, and when we talked this offline, like the little cycling with the metabolic, with the metabolic passport, where you're getting these data points, and you got the variation, right? We're not even talking the accuracy. Let's even say it's 85% accurate, right? Your number here, but all of a sudden that trend line starts moving upward. What is going on here, right? What was that series of events that led to this event causing that increase, right? And so that can, like, something's going on, and you can go ask the question. And again, that's one way, and agree with me or not, in my opinion, is a slight step forward going from the reactive side of healthcare to preventative, right?
No, absolutely. I think the future is going to our doctors with our blood sugar readings, with our, wearable readings and things.
It's the natural evolution with technology. We saw it with WebMD.
Right.
With the internet, WebMD, people are a little more informed, asking different questions. And this is just from what I've read and heard from, older doctors that was a paradigm shift. And now I think it's just the natural move forward. I mean, granted, you have to be cautious to make sure you're doing things properly. But understanding, the context of the data as well.
Getting into machine learning, because I think this is important too, from a clinician perspective, and I love all my doctors and physicians. I think they're amazing, but our brain power is limited. And so I think with WebMD and with machine learning, you can have all these other different possibilities of what this diagnosis would be, which I know that they're already using in cancer research for different avenues for treatment. And I think we do have to, as humans, we do have to humble ourselves. And we mentioned offline in one of our conversations in using AI as an aiding tool to say, okay, what other things am I not thinking about?
Yeah.
Because especially from even like for a racial bias perspective for diagnosing, people will automatically assume it's this one thing based on ethnicity. And it's not, right? It's all these other things that it possibly could be, right? And I think machine learning and AI results could also
it's still
provide
really
infinite scope.
young within that. We're still learning, right? Because that's always the fear is AI is going to kind of take over, and it's a great assistant. But you have to learn how to use it, and just in the context. But you also have to look at the quality of the data too.
Yeah.
That has to be fed into it. And it's like with anything, it comes down to education.
Yeah.
Right, is learning how learning the capabilities and then learning how to use it to aid and be a force multiplier, right, within your field. That's kind of where I'll leave it at that on there. I don't want to touch on the other side of that other stuff, but
the limitations of I think AI is what you do every day in your program is building trust and relationships. AI does not have that capability at all to understand just by eyeballing a person. Do they look okay? Do they feel okay? Are they acting kind of different? And I think that's one of the things that I feel very comfortable with, where like AI is not going to take my job in doing that. And you'll at least have one person doing the physical assessment.
Yeah, and you need that when you're looking at large data sets. It really is. At least from the objective side of things, it could really help. Because like you said, there's only so much we can see at one point, right? And the more quality information you have, right, the better the decision could be, right? So
the last thing I want to end on, we kind of touched about this in our conversation. I was at an Installation Innovation conference, which was really great, and I was talking about the families of these warfighters and how the constant moving around, not having access to care, how all of that stress weighs down on the family, and you've created a intervention to implement them or involve them into the HPO process. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, so we have the spouses fitness program. So they, during certain times of the day, they have access to our performance facility, and they bring their children along. They can spend time with their husbands. They work out together. Just to kind of, they're always out. They're always traveling. They're out in the field. It's just the nature of being in the military. So anything we can kind of bring it together, allow that to happen, because at least where I work, they truly do believe one team, one fight.
Right.
Family comes first, and the unit is a family too. So your family is part of the unit. They're part of the family, and so that is part of the approach that we try to take with everything. As much as possible.
Going back to that holistic approach, and I'm so excited that you dive deep into the human weapon system. Excited about version 2, but please go out and get your purchase of version 1 for now, and leave a comment on Amazon if you can.
Say thank you to the sponsors.
Thank you to the sponsors, and our sponsors are AFWorks, and we appreciate you for giving us this experience, for allowing us people like Dr. Christopher Meyers and us to connect and setting that tone. So thank you.
Foley.
And Jason Foley.
Oh, big Jason.
And Lieutenant Colonel Leah Johansson. And who else am I forgetting?
You know who you are.
And you know who you are. Thank you for all our contributors and supporters. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Wait.